Welcome to Umbrella Rebellion. I'm Marcy.
And I'm Dee.
We are finding healing after leaving a cult.
We will be discussing abuse and personal experience with the ATI, IBLP, and fundamental churches.
Trigger warning. This podcast may contain descriptions of various forms of abuse. Please take care for your safety and well-being while you are listening.
If the content becomes too much for you to handle, please turn this off. We hope to expose harmful teachings that lead to and justify abuse,
with the hope that those that are experiencing abuse can find support and escape from it.
Welcome to today's episode of Umbrella Rebellion. Tonight, we are going to be talking about our experience at ATI IBLP's headquarters, where Marcy and I both met. I guess since my experience was a little bit less than Marcy's, I'm going to go ahead and kind of just give a rundown, and we're just going to have a conversation. If she, has any questions, she's just going to interject. We have not planned this. We have not scripted this. So
it's just verbatim.
Whatever comes to our head.
Follow the rabbit trail.
Absolutely. I like the rabbit trail. Sometimes they're really good. We kind of left off in my story, like leading up to how I got into headquarters. I had somebody from ATI IBLP, either a men's meeting, and I was kind of trying to think about it the last couple of weeks. And I kind of think it might have been the what is that children's ministry?
The
Children's Institute.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it may have been people that had come down for the Children's Institute, because I do remember at some point we were going to schools and presenting the Children's Institute. So it may have been around that time, and they may have been like staying with us or something.
Okay.
We were a host family.
That would be very possible. I think the person that you told me talked with you guys about coming to headquarters would have been in that area.
Okay.
So that makes sense for the Children's Institutes. Or even there was also another program for the character qualities that they were pushing with schools. So if they were there, if you were sharing with schools, then it might have been the character qualities thing. I forget the name of it.
That's the one. Yeah, I just don't remember the name of it. Yeah.
Character. I don't remember, but my town here had it. They had big signs. They sent out these big signs that you could post.
Yeah, that was crazy. So I'm pretty sure that's who was at our house, and we were, hanging out and talking about all the different programs and stuff, and, got to talking about, my desire to help young girls who are troubled, because I was a troubled girl. I think that was like 2000, must have been like the middle of 2002. Because then I finally wound up going to headquarters in probably, I think October of 2002, because I stayed through till January.
Okay.
So I was there for 3 months. It was interesting because I had my own car and I was driving myself up there, but my dad and my brother were going up to the Northwoods. So they kind of like followed me and like delivered me there.
Because you have to be escorted. Because it's not like you've lived overseas by yourself and survived just fine.
Right? I mean, like,
yeah.
I went to South Korea.
Right? And you have to be escorted to it.
And I had to be escorted up there. I don't know if that was just like, well, let me make sure you get there safely because you're going to Chicago. Or
but there again, South Korea.
yeah. I managed to get home on a plane during mid-tour leave because the base I was at had they had commercial flights that flew out of it, but the plane broke. And so I had to get myself from the base I was at to Seoul, Korea, South Korea, because and we couldn't take any base stuff because the base transportation only goes to other bases. So we had to go into the city, find a bus that was going to Seoul. It's all in Korean. And there was like a group of us, thank God, because we were all like, you know, some of them knew a little bit more Korean than I did. But, oh man, we just got on the bus and we're like, hope this is going to Seoul.
I've been there. I've done some overseas trips like that, and it's always an adventure.
It is. And we got there and we were fine. But, you know, like I can navigate my way in a foreign country through a foreign language, but going to Chicago
is scary.
Well, yeah, I've been there since, and it's, you know, you just stay out of the rough neighborhoods.
Yeah, exactly. You just don't drive there.
Kind of like New Orleans. It's kind of like New Orleans, you know, maybe a little bit worse. Let's see. So we drove up there. I remember driving down the street right past like the headquarters building, and there was this big field on the right-hand side. And I was like, my first like introduction to headquarters was a group of guys and girls playing ultimate frisbee in the field. And I was like, they play sports together? Like, really? That's interesting.
On special occasions, and the girls did it in skirts.
Yes, they did. They were all in very, very long skirts. And so I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I don't remember like exactly how it happened, but I do know at some point I walked up to the group of people playing and they offered to let me play. I'm like, I've never played ultimate frisbee in my life. How do I play? I think we played ultimate frisbee for a little while. My memory's a little bit like spotty on headquarters because I was only there for a little bit of time. And then after that time, it was when I had a lot of trauma in my life. So a lot of those traumatic events kind of took the place of some of the memories. So I can remember, I think I went to Indy twice. One I know was for counseling seminar. I actually have a picture.
Was this when you got after you got to headquarters, or was was it okay? All right.
Yeah. So at some point we took a trip over there. I don't even remember if anybody came with me from our house that we lived in. What I do remember is that I was working in the kitchen. Then we had, I don't know, like 15 girls living in our house.
Yes. So were you at Brook Manor?
I was at Brook Manor.
Yeah. So there was always about 15. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, this is the most amount of women I have ever lived with in my life. So
that was such a weird setup.
Really
dorm life, honestly. That's what it was. It was dorm life.
I mean, to a certain extent, but it's like you had a whole entire house and common areas where like when I was in the dorms in the Air Force, it was either a bunch of rooms and then you might have one kitchen like in a 3-story building, you know, and then in other newer bases, they had like a kitchenette in between 2 rooms. And so, so yeah, having 15 people in a house in like different room, it was really weird. So, it's almost like a house share thing, you know?
It was a house. Yes, it was. Did you know that was their former printing building?
I may have known that, but I don't remember. Yeah.
So before they moved into the large building where they had the whole print shop in the lower floor and the basement floor, that building was used for their print shop. So they redid that whole lower where the kitchen was.
Yeah.
All of that was their print shop, and they had offices above when it was much, much smaller.
Okay.
The organization was much smaller. So they had retrofitted that to house people.
That makes a lot of sense with the layout. Yeah. So, so I remember like a few things that I remember from there is I had my car, so I had freedom, but I was always really afraid to like go a lot of places and do anything because I didn't really know all of the unspoken rules about where you could go. Say that again.
There were a lot of them. unspoken rules.
Right. So, I mean, I know I couldn't go to the movies. So, and it's like, I think we went out to eat a lot.
Yes. Yeah. That
So,
was literally the only thing we could do for entertainment.
right.
Or the grocery store. I used to take a whole load of girls to the grocery store because most everybody there didn't have a car. So to have a car was unusual.
Yeah, it was not common. Yeah, I remember, oh my gosh, I think it was for your birthday. We blindfolded you and I think somebody else and took y'all out to eat. Or no, you were driving because you were the other person that had a car. So we blindfolded two people and brought them out to dinner. I was like one of the first times we ever went out to dinner, and I was like, okay, that was fun.
Were you in on the birthday party that we kidnapped them?
I think so.
Okay. So yes. So that's a fun story. We should come back to that because that was the perfect description of what we did for fun. Yes. We did blindfold them and we took them to dinner. We kidnapped them from choir practice. No, bells. They were doing bells.
Oh, right.
Yes.
I remember that. And then I think it was for Christmas. We had gone to different people's houses and I don't remember what we did. It was some kind of game or something, scavenger hunt. I don't even remember, but I remember just this weird feeling of okay, I'm going to the guy's house and we're going to do something. And this is weird. This doesn't feel like it flows with their whole, culture. Okay, you can't talk to each other and you can't, date, but we're going to make a game about y'all going to each other's houses. It was really weird. And
that
bizarre.
Sounds really strange. I don't remember that, but I mean, I'm sure if you talk more about it, I might remember what the context was of that, but that is really odd.
Yeah. I remember we wound up at Brook Manor at the end of it and we were playing ping pong with the guys.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. I wonder how they got that approved. Somebody in very good favor asked.
Right.
Yes, they were a favorite at the time.
Yeah. So, and I think it was a Christmas, it was the whole premise was us doing something for Christmas as a staff.
Okay.
So I don't remember exactly what it was. And then, so, I mean, it was it was really hard to understand all of the things that were kind of taught in the basic life principles course through the wisdom booklets. And then you come up to headquarters and it's a little bit of that plus these really weird situations where you're well, that doesn't necessarily fit their teachings. Interesting. And it's well, if you can do this, then why can't you do that? It was just this whole bizarre world of how does this work? I don't understand this world.
Yes. I imagine coming into it cold turkey, not having had much background in it already, would feel really bizarre because it even felt a little weird for me, and I had been grown up in the program, but not that weird. I imagine that had to be pretty bizarre. Did you do, I guess in 2002, so also in 2002, this is going to rabbit trail us, but we would do staff meetings on Saturday and Sunday nights.
I remember the staff meetings on, I think, Sunday nights. I don't know about Saturdays, but
maybe
I do
Saturday
remember
they didn't do, but Sunday night they did. I thought they did it both weekends.
They may, but I do know that Gothard would come to one of them.
It was probably Sunday night.
The Sunday night.
Sunday night. Yes. So that's what I was going to say was at that point, Gothard's teaching had gotten really left field. So it was not in line with what all the wisdom booklets were saying and a lot of what we had been taught growing up. It had gone just haywire. He had these crazy things that he was teaching about. And so that's
Power of the spoken
also,
blessing and the
yes,
Rhemas
crying
and
out.
yeah.
Yeah. And they had gotten increasingly bizarre over the last, I would say the last year before you got there. And so that's probably why they didn't jive with the curriculum either, was that he had kind of taken a nosedive into the crazy.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Outside of what it normally was anyway.
Right. It wasn't the status quo crazy. It was new crazy. Yeah.
Yes.
So I remember also we had morning meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least once a week we had morning meetings.
No, it was every morning.
It was every morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that was like, I remember at one point there was like a testimonial where you were sharing, and I was like, okay, I'll be honest. I was hoping that some dude would like notice me and be like, hey, I think she's cute. So of course I'm going to make myself be known, right? And I'm like sharing this story, but I was like, I should have totally changed the story that I shared, because I basically was just like, I'm tainted and I was in the Air Force and I'm like nothing you would ever want. So don't even bother. Like that was basically like, looking back now, it's like what I shared was like, I was trying to be like, well, God changed me and I'm this desirable person now and I'm all whole and I need a husband. Please, somebody, Yeah, it was terrible. I really thought I was going to find a husband there, but no.
I think that probably a good portion of the girls that went up there thought that too. And a lot of them did.
Yes.
Even with as strict a policy as they had against it, there were a lot of pairings.
There were. Yeah.
None of that. Mm-hmm.
That's funny. And
well, I mean, because honestly speaking, ATI you didn't really have any option outside after high school. Women didn't have an option to go to. We weren't allowed to go to college, or it was looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
And our purpose was to get married and to have children and train them up in a godly way. So the real purpose of being there was to serve until we got married.
Right.
And this was an obvious place to meet like-minded men. So
right. And people and men who were interested in serving and ministry. And so you're like, well, this is the perfect place for me to go to meet a guy. I mean, that wasn't like my main focus, but it was like a side note, right?
Yeah. I think that's probably what it was for most girls too, was a side note. You're supposed to serve happily until you found someone. And
always hoping that maybe that person's going to be in your path somewhere.
Yes. And since most of us were pretty isolated at home and in very strict churches, the pool of possibilities was really slim.
Yeah.
So this was a large pool of possibilities. There were more fish in the sea there.
Yes. But being an older student, it was, a lot of the guys weren't really my age, or like the older ones had been there for a while. So they had already either paired off or gotten kicked out or
or they weren't interested.
Right. So, so my whole plan to, find a ministry to serve in and also find a husband didn't necessarily work, but I was only there for 3 months. I mean, I'm glad I went. My two of my aunts came up while I was up there. We went and toured Chicago. I got to see some of the sites. I remember Joy was at the head of the kitchen when I was there. Her and I went off to Chicago one day to find something that we needed for the kitchen, or I don't remember what it was, but it was like an errand for the kitchen, right? And so I'm like, okay, I have a car, let's go.
Yes.
And then we wound up at Starbucks, and I was like, oh, this is nice. It's kind of nice to get away.
Yes, those were such sweet treats when you could get away to do things like that. So I have a question for you. When you said that you were interested in working with girls, troubled youth or troubled women, girls, did you feel like that you were brought up to headquarters under false pretenses, as far as, did they tell you there's opportunity for you to do this there or to learn about it there, and then when you got there you were in the kitchen? I've heard that story from multiple people.
Yeah, we kind of touched about that on one of our episodes already. That I knew I was going to be working in the kitchen, but it was under the pretense that I was going to get connected with the right people and get the training that I needed to be able to move forward and work with. I think there was actually a girls' home somewhere in the South that I maybe Colorado. I don't remember exactly, but like that was my goal. Gosh. Okay. So another memory that I just had was we went to one of the, I can't even remember. It was like an upholstery place.
Okay.
I don't know. Like they were doing upholstery, and it was like almost like, let's tour one of our ministries people's houses.
There might have been a small offshoot. Like a lot of those small offshoots happened quite often, and they would die out pretty quick, which is probably what that girls' home thing was.
Right. So, it was kind of like almost like opportunities for people to learn a trade kind of thing. And like, I remember it was almost like we went to a farm or something. And I don't remember who all went, but I know it was like a bunch of us. And then I know one time we went on a hike. Can't remember where.
Starved Rock?
Might have been. And Gothard spoke, and I actually have some pictures of that.
That was a yearly thing that they did. It was like it was always in the fall. We went for the fall foliage, and it was like an all day trip. They bus everybody out there. It was like a staff picnic day. We didn't have to work that day. It was a yearly thing that they did, and it was at a state park called Starved Rock.
Yeah, that kind of sounds familiar. Yeah, I mean, other than that, just hanging out with some of the girls in the house was about all we did. We would stay up and talk, and then you would go and work, and weekends were spent like walking to the little downtown area, and the little shops that we had in Oak Brook, Hinsdale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Hinsdale.
Yeah. So I know I used to rollerblade a lot in the neighborhood, but other than that, I mean, I was there for such a short time. I wound up for Christmas, there was some siblings that lived there, and one of our housemates lived up in Duluth. Basically drove them home, dropped off them, and then went up to Duluth and with one of the housemates and spent Christmas with them, because I wasn't going to drive all the way home for Christmas.
No.
Or I didn't have the money really to spend on a flight. So, and I think for Thanksgiving, I went to Ohio so I got to go and do some really cool stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do had I not been there. I met some really amazing people. A lot of us lost touch for a long time and then found each other on Facebook.
Yes. And that with a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, okay, so the other thing I think that really did not sit well with me, and this is kind of like the last really like distinct memory, and it bothered me for so many years, is there was a young girl that was living there with her sister. She may have been 12, 13 years old.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Anybody who was there with us would know who we're talking about, but I don't want to share someone else's story. So, and I remember her and her sister, and I believe her sister was 18, 17, 18, 19 at the time. So she was a little bit younger than myself. I was 21. Yeah.
Okay.
I think 21 at that time. I recall them going to counseling with Mr. Gothard. And his office was right across from where we lived. And there was several occasions where the 12-year-old girl was there by herself.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't sit well with me because almost all of the teachings that we've ever been taught through ATI, IBLP, and the fundamental churches I had been in was never to have the appearance of evil.
Yes.
Right? So if a man was alone with a woman, that would be an appearance of evil.
Yeah.
And I was like, so it's okay for him because he's this leader of this group, but everybody else is supposed to follow this rule, but him. And I was like, this doesn't sit well with me. And it bothered me for so many years, and it still bothers me, I think, to this day, just because. And then especially after all the Recovering Grace stuff came out, where I was reading story after story of Gothard being inappropriate with girls and you know sexually assaulting them, so I was like, those two girls I had a special place in my heart for. And like when I put the pieces together, I was like, if that, excuse my French, motherfucker touch those girls, I want to rip his throat out.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And that was my thoughts. Like when all those pieces came together, I'm like, that motherfucker.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was pretty much my reaction when the lawsuit came out. I knew there's probably more to it than I knew about, and that was probably pretty bad. But when the lawsuit came out, that was the first thing. These same two girls, that was the first thing that came to mind, because my half of that story is the way that the houses were set up. They had kind of a den mother, so it's called a house leader, and it was whoever had been there longest would kind of work down the ranks, and the longer you'd been there, the higher you were in that ranking. Because I had been there for 3 or 4 years, there weren't that many people that had been there that long, so I was like second in that hierarchy. So assistant, if you would. I don't know if that was a title, but anyway, second or third there. So that house leader came to me and said, look, don't say anything to anybody else, but if they stay over there longer than 10 o'clock at night, you have to go get them. And don't let Mr. Gothard tell you no. You go get them and you bring them home. So under the pretense that these girls were underage and needed to be doing schoolwork during the day, but they also wanted them to help, like do service projects. And so they were tired. They were children and they needed more sleep. And then he would keep them over there till 10 o'clock at night doing counseling, and they weren't getting enough rest. They were falling asleep during their lessons, and they still had other responsibilities they expected them to do, I think, in the kitchen.
Yeah, one of them definitely worked in the kitchen with me.
Yeah, I think that was the younger one. So that was I think that's when my heart knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. I already had a check in my spirit about it. If you want to use their terms, it was a check in your spirit if you felt like something wasn't right. And I had already had that feeling for a long time, but that incident made my heart go really grieve, because I knew something was really not right.
Yeah. So I was editing, and I realized that we may not have been clear on a few things with the story of our friend. Maybe it wasn't clear. So we do not know if any abuse happened with our friend. Considering the circumstances, what it looked like, and the allegations made against Mr. Gothard and the legal case that came forward against Mr. Gothard, to us it looks suspicious that he spent so much time with our friend. It is our hope that there was no ill intentions there and there was nothing that was inappropriate done in those counseling sessions. I have not spoken to that friend. We kind of lost contact. I would never ask somebody, unless they were willing to share with me. So it's nothing that I would be willing to go out to try and confirm. So I just kind of wanted to clear that up and kind of hopefully that clears that up, that based on the legal suit against Mr. Gothard, the circumstances surrounding the counseling sessions and allegations made against him for inappropriateness, abuse, and molestation, we hope above all that she was not one of his victims. And if she ever wanted to share her story or her side of the thing, we would always be open to, even in private, talking about it. And if she watches this, we just want you to know that we love you and we care about you, and we would do anything to help you heal if anything did happen. If nothing happened, we would be so thankful for that. So just wanted to kind of pop in here. Editing, I was like, well, that wasn't really clear. It sounds like we're alleging that something happened, but we have no proof. So it's just our observations that we were trying to convey. So I hope that clears that up. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I had been there longer. Mm-hmm. Because those two girls and I would talk a lot, and I just absolutely adored them, and I just kind of felt like, kind of a protector for them. Like I wanted to protect them, and sometimes I just wonder if I had stayed longer, what would I have done?
Yeah,
because I'm not one, like, I would have gone up to Mr. Gothard and been like, what is up with this? This is what you teach. Why are you doing this? Like, at some point I would have gotten to that point. Cause I mean, I used to, I am not one to shy away from like confrontation. And I've even like stood up to like my officers in the Air Force. They are just people. That's always how I looked at them. They are just people. They just have a different rank. They have different experience. They got, like, the officers in the Air Force, they got a college degree. That's the only difference between them and me. And so I've never been like, oh no, it's an authority. Da, 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 da. Well, that's probably why I was, a troubled teen too.
Hey, like, you're standing up for yourself. This is what most of us should have been. And that's probably a really good perspective that we needed there, because at that point, all of us had been brainwashed long enough that we didn't know how to stand up for ourselves that way, either because we had been in the program as small children or because we had been there at headquarters so long that we were drinking the Kool-Aid. So
yeah. So, I mean, I just wonder, had I been there longer, if I would have been able to figure something out.
Mm-hmm. I honestly speaking, as one that was there, if you had done anything like that or tried to advocate for them in any way, you probably would have been on the next bus home.
Oh, yeah, like, I know.
Yeah. So it wouldn't have been, if you had been able to do anything, it would have been only in small measure. If that makes your heart feel any better.
Oh, I mean, I know, like, I couldn't have prevented anything from happening to any of the girls that he, abused. But, it just makes me wonder, could I have gotten into somebody's head?
Yes. No, I get that. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
And then go, oh my goodness, this isn't right. Or if I had known, I'd been like, we need to get this girl home.
Yeah. Like, I've often thought back to that and thought, why didn't I say something, or why didn't I do something, or why didn't I tell someone, like tell a parent or tell another adult that this bothered me so badly? But I think that my conclusion in that was that I didn't know, you didn't ever question authority, right? Ever. And especially Mr. Gothard, because he was like the ultimate, like, guru status. You didn't touch that or question him. And so that was really outside my realm of thinking anyway. Mm-hmm. But looking back on it as an adult, I grieve that I didn't know to do what needed to be done there.
Right. And, and that goes into kind of why we are doing this podcast, is because everything that man put in a publication, every word of God that he got, every, training materials was so he could take advantage of girls.
Yeah.
And he could brainwash children to be
Mm-hmm.
able to listen to him, to be his victims.
It was a power high for him.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And as you said, even if you had said something to your parents, their parents, the answer would be, well, that's Mr. Gothard. There must be a reason that God put him in that situation to do that, and the answer would be God must be working something out, or God is, they're troubled and they need more help, or something. So even if either you or I had said anything, it would have been brushed under the rug anyway.
It would have. It really would have. Yeah. Which is what makes it so terribly sad.
Because, I mean, the adults, even if they knew that something was going on, they didn't want to upset the ministry and all of the good that the ministry was doing. So they had to make the problem go away, not protect the young girls that were being abused.
Yeah. Yeah. And the word that comes to mind, one of their watchwords, is that Mr. Gothard is above reproach, which just means he's not to be questioned. He you just can't question him because he always has good intent, which is the most dangerous of, that's what makes it a cult. Yeah. Is that nobody questioned him. Right. Nobody questioned any of it. Yeah. He was just close to God's status. Not that he claimed to be God, but that, he was just so righteous that he couldn't possibly do anything wrong.
Well, it was almost like he was prophet status, right?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. He was prophet status. And that's how he billed himself too. So even in those staff meetings that we were talking about, when things really went south, I was talking about that. He would proclaim himself a prophet of God, that God gave him these visions, or God gave him these words, and that it was his job to tell us what God wanted us to do, or how we were supposed to live, or whatever. And these were epiphanies, and sometimes they called them rhemas. He would get rhemas out of the Bible. So
yeah, which is like, so, I mean, like right now, I'm just like,
I know, right? It's just
right, because it's like that was part of their teaching, like that you had a direct line with God and you didn't need anybody. But then also people had these special gifts, and he had the gifts of like prophecy and teaching and stuff that he would talk about. And so it was just like, it was almost like, okay, well, I can't get away with it unless I come up with a new thing to do.
Yes.
I have to get the focus off of what I'm doing and put it on this new teaching. And it's like if anybody would step back and like look at it from an outside perspective.
Yeah.
It was like so blatantly clear. But when it's all wrapped up into this package of, if you do these things, if you follow these steps, you will be closer to God.
Yes.
It is really hard to see the whole picture because you're just going step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I'm going to get closer to God. Step 5, step 6, step 7. Why don't I feel closer to God? And then you're in the midst of it and you're like, whoa, how did I get here?
That's a good way to describe it. That's a really good way to describe it. So was there a certain thing that, I know you said you were there for 3 months. So was there a reason why you left? Like, what was the progression of events to end your time there?
So because I had a back injury from way back when, and I was having difficulty working in the kitchen. And so I asked them to find somewhere for me to work differently for the remainder of my time. And it was, oh, we'll find some place. And then I wound up, they like gave me some stupid, idiotic task of like going through mail that got returned and taking people's addresses off their mailing list. So it's like they created a task for me.
Yeah,
so,
that happened a lot.
Yeah.
It happened a lot. I do remember you saying that your back was hurting and that there was some pain levels there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had back pain my whole entire life. And I had real bad sciatica at that time. And it had been exacerbated by my time in the service. And so actually, I don't remember who it was, but somebody had turned me on to chiropractic treatment while I was there. And so after I went to the chiropractor a couple times there and then came home and got chiropractic care, I finally got relief from it after a couple of years.
Good.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, some good things came out of it.
Some small pieces of light, little nuggets. Yes.
So when I went back home, I was in a fundamental church while I was at home. And one of the girls from the church called me up and said, hey, we're having a Christmas party. There's a guy that's going to be there. I think he'd be perfect for you. I'm like, okay. And I went to the Christmas party. And 6 months later, I was married.
6 months. I did not realize it was that fast.
It was. Met him on December 23rd, married on June 28th.
Wow. I say wow. I was married very quickly too, so that makes sense.
Yeah, Jeremy and I were too, but it's working out so far. So,
well, and you're a little wiser now.
Yeah.
We're like, hard knocks makes it easier to make decisions like that sometimes.
we were both like 3 to 5 year plan. Okay, forget it. My mom goes one day, she's like, well, why don't y'all just get married? And I'm like, sure, why not? Let's do it next weekend.
Yeah. Why not? Let's do this thing.
It's like once my parents were like, yes, we like him. I'm like, okay. Good guy.
Yes. That's awesome.
So that is what got me out of ATI IBLP, is because I had met my ex-husband.
Okay.
And then that whole story of my life started.
Cool.
Which will bring us into my next episode after we go through Marcy's headquarters experience and working in the ATI IBLP world. So that kind of brings us to the end of this episode. And it was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be.
But I've so enjoyed hearing your story. Some of it I knew and some of it I didn't. So that was really awesome.
So yeah, that was why I left headquarters and never came back, is because I got married.
Which is absolutely legitimate ATI reason to never come back. Actually, the ultimate reason. I mean, that was the
ultimate reason. Yes. I mean, like,
that was the goal.
Yes. So, so basically all of my dreams just went up in smoke. And I will say this, we had talked about in one of our episodes about the vows. And I remember, I believe it was either the counseling seminar or the advanced thingy.
There were a lot of vows in the counseling seminars, probably.
Okay. So it was probably the counseling seminar, and I had made a vow to be single for 2 years. And when I met my ex-husband, I searched for scriptures to get me out of that vow.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't working for me, because I wanted to get married.
Yes.
Had I stayed true to my vow, life would be different. But I wouldn't have my kids. So
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, I think at 20 some odd years old, it's, really difficult to make vows. And, I understand goals and, you want to achieve certain things and working towards those achievements, but understanding that there are things in life that can derail you from those.
Yes. Yes. I honestly think that that many of those commitments and vows that he had people make, we did not know what we were doing.
No.
And if you're doing something like that under just duress, would God really even hold you to that? So I don't know. That's a theological question that I don't know enough theology to battle, and I probably disagree with the theology anyway. So,
and if you make a vow under the teaching of a pedophile, is it really valid?
Exactly.
So
I don't know. I think the one way that I got out of it was because my parent released me from those.
And then you have to think like, okay, so that and we'll get into this about my next phase of life story. But the fact that I broke that vow and how my life ended up going after that was very, 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 very difficult for my spiritual walk. Because I didn't get the fairy tale ending.
Okay. Yes.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I thought that it was because I broke a vow.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Did you think it was because of breaking the vow?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's so sad. That had nothing to do with you, and that's so sad that you took all of that on you and thought that that's why you were living that pain when it was somebody else's fault, both his and the ex, Mr. Gothard and the ex, both of them.
Yeah,
it was both their faults.
So I lived with a lot of guilt for a lot of years, and I also allowed myself to go through a lot of pain because I thought it was my own fault.
Oh.
Well, I did this to myself. I deserve it.
My goodness, that makes my heart hurt for you.
I know, it makes me if this was somebody else telling me this, I'd be like, oh my God, that's terrible. Like it is, but it was the reality of what the teaching we were under. That was and that's why we talk about this kind of stuff, because those dangerous teachings are what set us up for such damage and such control, and it being manipulated in so many different situations because you desire a relationship with God, that they're telling you this is your way to have a relationship with God. So
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I absolutely believe it. It walked me straight into the abuse that I was willing to tolerate.
Yeah.
Because it felt normal.
Yeah. And so we will get into Marcy's story of Headquarters next episode. One little quick thing. If y'all are listening to this on a podcast, we ask that you just subscribe to the whatever podcast. What is it called? Oh my God, platform.
Yes.
Yeah. We ask that you just subscribe to our podcast on whatever podcast platform that you listen to us on. We're on Spotify. We should be on Apple, if not already soon. Google and several others, and I'm still working on getting it on every other platform that I have available. We are on YouTube. If you are watching us on YouTube, we appreciate you. Please click that like button, subscribe if you like our content. Hit that bell notification so you can be notified for the next episode. And we also have a link down to merch, which I am wearing today. Is our shirt, our very first shirt.
Yes.
And it's got the Umbrella Rebellion. Oops. Rebellion logo. And then on the back, hopefully you can see this. Whoops. I'm in a tight spot. Can Can you see it?
Yes. Yes. Freed from tyranny.
So,
so super cool.
I love it. Marcy and I worked on that for a while and came up with that idea, and we just absolutely love it. I think we have two different options. It's just the Umbrella Rebellion logo on one. If you want to support the podcast, but you haven't been involved and you don't feel like you've been freed from tyranny, but you can also support the podcast with the Umbrella Rebellion logo on the back. Or if you feel like telling everybody you are now free from the tyranny of these teachings, you can get that shirt as well.
All right. Thank you for listening to us tonight and joining us. We hope you come back next week and join the rebellion.
That's perfect. All right. Y'all have a great day.
And nope. I have to do it without it being like, because I totally could have done it 2 seconds before, but now that I'm reading this and it's all canned. Oh my God. Okay. Why is that so hard?
I don't know.
Why is that so hard? Oh my goodness. I'm so tired right now. I'm slapping.